Welcome to video number 1 of our end of the 300 movie challenge thing summary, whatever. This video, we will be talking about our 15 favorite films that we saw throughout this whole thing. We've each been ranking all of these individually and keeping the rankings a secret, so this is sort of a reveal to each other as well as to you guys in terms of what movies we liked the absolute most. Now, of course, keep in mind these are very, very personal choices. And also, just because it's not on the list, obviously, that doesn't mean we don't like it. 15 movies out of 300 is a really small percent. So there's tons of movies that we all really like that we're just not going to be talking about just because they're not in, the top 15. So, and the plan is so this video is our favorite 15. Next video is going to be our least favorite 15. And then after that, probably in the description of that video, I'm going to put a spreadsheet open so you can see our full rankings of everything. So if you want to know exactly where the ranking is for any of the movies, you can see it there. So, yeah. But for now, I guess we'll just jump right into it. And I guess I'll go over my number 15 favorite movie that we saw.
Okay.
So, I actually had a little bit of a trouble trying to place which one of these I wanted to do. If it was a tie between 15th and 16th, and ultimately I chose this one because I just really wanted to talk about this one. So
okay.
My number 15 is War for the Planet of the Apes.
Oh.
And I remember because when we went over Tara, you thought it was the least of the three. But the reason is that because honestly, all of these movies are really good. Right? And it's the only trilogy or more films where all of the films in the trilogy are in my like a lot category or better. So, even though this is the lowest on my top 15, it is the one I liked the most. Rise of the Planet of the Apes is a few steps below that, and Dawn is a few steps below that. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head. But yeah, the whole thing is just really solid. The story is interesting. The characters are interesting. This movie especially, why I like it the most is it is kind of a slow movie, and it plays on the atmosphere and emotion of what's going on. And there are a few moments that are a little odd in terms of the whole avalanche thing. It's why did that happen, right? But just as an emotional experience, and also it's just kind of a climax finale of this set of movies. I think it just works really, really, really well. So yeah, I ended up putting this one at number 15 for.
Cool. Oh, right, I'm next.
We just talked about this.
I know, but I don't know how to transition.
Okay.
For it for some reason I feel like it's just harder to transition when it's things that we like, because I'm already starting to get choked up for some reason.
We'll go.
So okay, so my number 15 was Captain America: The First Avenger. And okay, yeah, I've seen this I think 3 times. Evidently it ended a lot better than when I watched The Hunger Games 3 times. So I feel I don't know, now that we're at the end of 300 movie challenge, we've seen all the other movies with Captain America in it. I feel I want to rewatch this again and just
so do I actually.
Yeah, just see what I can look at and just see kind of how Steve Rogers changed, because I wasn't super into superheroes before. I used to watch Teen Titans when I was younger. I mean, I'm sure most people did, but that was the only superhero anything that I really consumed, besides another thing, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I always just didn't think of myself as maybe I would never really get into Western superheroes or comics or anything like that. I was more of a manga anime person, but I don't know, even the first time I watched Captain America, I was wow, I really like this guy. Not just because Chris Evans is really good looking, but I really like his just who he is as a character. It's he really just wants to do the right thing, and I feel I wish I could have been more like him at the first time I watched this movie. I've always felt like I've never really been where I was supposed to be, but I think now I'm starting to find a little bit of my footing. But yeah, I guess like for me, it's mostly I just really liked Steve Rogers as a character, and I really liked his like dynamic with Peggy Carter and Bucky Barnes. We'll see them again later, but I just felt like I connected with him a lot. So
I agree too.
Yeah.
That's why this is number 15.
Actually, that's kind of a fitting transition. Well, I guess I will say Captain America did not make my top 15, but it's very close. Just because, like Valen, I had a very hard time with it and everything.
Mhm.
But mine is actually Avengers, the first one.
Mm.
Oh, cool.
So, similarly to I also was not like a humongous superhero person either. But I actually didn't even like, I wasn't the one who wanted to go see Iron Man. It was my uncle that did, and then we ended up going and seeing it in India and everything. And then I saw Captain America, and I was like, oh, this is really cool and everything. And I saw Thor. So when it was revealed that there was going to be an Avengers movie, I remember I was like, because let's face it, DC has a very notorious history in terms of its films, which is Wonder Woman made it a little bit better. Well, made it better. And then Aquaman, well, we know what happened with that. But
Hey, Shazam is good too, but whatever.
I still have to see Shazam.
I have to see that
Yes.
still. I heard that that's really good.
It is.
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
Anyway.
But as I was saying, but then I saw it and I was like, oh my god, like all these characters that I had seen in like other things, like you see them like kind of form together into a group and stuff. And I like how it's not like they perfectly fit together. Like
Mhm.
you see over the course of the Avengers that it's not a completely perfect fit or anything. But like in the very first movie, you don't see them as like a perfect fit either, which I really liked, but they went with it. It worked.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't have either. Again, I don't have either of the films that you mentioned in my top 15. I like them a good amount. I don't remember the exact number, but yeah, I like them both quite a lot. But actually, now that you've both mentioned that, now I'm wondering. I'm like, I think I might have the least MCU films in my top 15 out of all of us, which is unexpected. But
yeah.
we'll see. We'll see. I'm curious to see what you think. But anyway, I guess on to my number 14.
Yeah.
So there were a few discussions that we did, especially near the beginning, where I wish we had like could redo them. And main reason being, we were kind of like awkward, didn't really know what to say, and there were some movies where I was kind of non-committal in terms of like how I felt about them, and I'm really like I'm annoyed at myself now because I look back on it, I'm like, why were you so non-committal? Just say you really like the movie, because damn it, I really like Forrest Gump.
Oh.
So Forrest Gump is my number 14, and it was one of those where the discussion I was like, I don't really know how to feel about it. I'm not sure, and it's just like, damn it, like it's really good, okay, and like I'm amazed that again, movie number 2 still ended up being in my top 15, right? The one that like, and again, this is also one that like I don't have any connection to beforehand, right? So
Yeah.
a movie that's all the way from the second movie we saw, I had no connection with it beforehand, and it ended up being this solid. And it's just because Forrest is a really engaging and likable character. Lieutenant Dan is a really engaging and likable character. Just the story and what happens, it's just really interesting. You're just really invested the whole time, and it's just a good movie. I don't know what else to say. It's just a really, really solid movie. And
Oh no, I was just clapping.
Oh. And yeah, it's just a really solid movie, and I think part of the reason actually why I was a bit non-committal is because we did watch it so early, and at this point,
yeah.
we only think we'd seen before is Lion King, which is also good. So I guess I probably didn't realize how much shit we would have to see throughout this whole thing. So it puts it a little bit more perspective now. I know. So like I was like so innocent thinking that, oh, Forrest Gump is like a decent movie, and it's like, actually no, it's really fucking good. So yeah, Forrest Gump is my number 14. So there we go.
Yay!
I guess I'll reveal Forrest Gump is number 16, so it just barely didn't make it.
Oh.
I guess very brief comment on that. It's it's Forrest Gump. I feel like a lot of people do like this movie, and it is a good movie, and I think it deserves a lot of the like praise that it gets, and it got a lot of things right. It did a lot of really interesting and revolutionary things. So I guess honorable mentions number 16. Okay. 14, I was like having a tough time between 14 and 13, but I ultimately went with Thor Ragnarok, which I think is one of maybe like 2 technical, like mostly comedy movies that are on my list. Well, okay, Thor Ragnarok has like some serious moments, but let's face it, I perceive it to be mostly a superhero comedy.
Yeah.
It's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
I didn't expect it to be, like, because Thor 1 was fine, but then I heard that, like, Thor 2 was extremely dull, like, from you and then from other, like, reviews that I've watched about, like, just the MCU or, like, Thor as a character.
To be perfectly fair, I do think some people hate it too much and say it's, like, flat out bad. I don't think it's bad. It's objectively a fine movie. It's just not interesting. So
That's kind of the impression that I got. Like, it would be kind of dull, but it wouldn't be, like, the worst experience of my life, but I guess I didn't know what to expect going to Ragnarok, so I was just pleasantly surprised. It was like, okay, so Tara talked about the Avengers, and I'm gonna be honest, I did not like Loki for a long time. Like, I liked him as a villain, but I didn't get why people liked him as, like, just a character. Until I saw Thor Ragnarok. Which is really a bummer because, you know, he dies in Infinity War, but I just finally saw like what the funny like sibling interaction between him and Thor was, and like they had this very good dynamic, and I wish that we had a little bit more of it. We don't really know what's gonna happen to Loki now, but I didn't know what to expect, and when I came into it, I was like, this is not just a superhero movie. This is superhero comedy, and this is awesome.
Yeah. I will say the best part of The Dark World is Thor and Loki interacting with each other. So there's a bit of that. I think, Thor Ragnarok, I think it's around like number 20 for me. It's definitely far up there, but yeah, it's so I agree that's also a really, really solid movie.
So my number 14, I guess, which may come as a little bit of a surprise, because I don't know if you guys ranked it nearly as high as I did, but I have Finding Nemo.
Oh, okay. It's not too far down.
Because, I don't know, for me it's a very nostalgic movie where at the time when I watched it, it was like something where I was like, yeah, this is a pretty good movie. But then after I watched it again and everything, I kind of was like, oh, this is actually like really, really good movie. And I started appreciating some of the elements a little bit more with it and everything, especially because at the time when I first watched it when I was little, I didn't understand Marlin's character at all. But I understood Nemo's perspective. But now that I'm older, I can understand Marlin's perspective. And since the movie is essentially about Marlin, I was able to like better appreciate his decisions and what happened and everything too. And just the visuals are really pretty. I think it was like I believe this was the second Pixar movie that we saw, right? Other than like the Toy Story ones, right?
We saw Bug's Life also.
Oh yeah, that thing.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That existed.
Sorry.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty. Honestly, Bug's Life is kind of how I feel about Thor: The Dark World. Honestly, like it's fine,
It's
and like that's
fine,
it.
it's forgettable.
Yeah. So anyway.
I was gonna say that it was one of the first Pixar movies where Because while I like Toy Story, Finding Nemo was the movie that I used to point to as that's my favorite Pixar movie and everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely like the movie as well. I do not like it as much as you do in that sense, but it is definitely
And
a
the
noticeably.
nostalgia played into it.
Yeah, we all have. I'm sure we all have that kind of movie for,
Yeah.
especially at Pixar movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a really solid movie. I just don't have it quite up there. My number 13 was my number 1 for a long time.
Oh.
And so, if anything, I'm kind of surprised that it actually is now number 13 because just because that kind of shows, like, wow, the earlier years for this were not very good. Because, you know, it took a long time for me to get movies that were better than I thought were better than this. It was, in fact, this movie was my number 1 for over 100 movies.
Oh, wow.
And it's a movie that none of us really thought too much about. Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Nice.
Die Hard with a Vengeance is my number 13. It's fucking Die Hard with a Vengeance. I don't really know what to say about it. It's just really entertaining. Samuel Jackson's amazing. And the plot's interesting. The villain's interesting. The action is ridiculous, and that's the point. And this, like, when people, because I know, like, for example, we don't really like Taken, or we don't really like the Fast and Furious movies, and it's like, oh, but it's like dumb action. You can, you gotta get in the mood. I'm like, no. This is the good kind of dumb action movie, right? This has what you need. This is actually, it's not just look at the boom, right? There's that too, but there's, the characters are funny, the dialogue is funny, the plot's interesting. It's just, it has pretty much everything for just a really good, entertaining action movie, and so that's why it gets all the way up here for me.
You already know how much we love this movie. Unfortunately, it did not make the top 15 for me, but yes.
We'll see what happens with me. I'll just say that for now. So I'm sorry that right now I don't have much variety, because number 13 for me is Captain America Winter Soldier.
Oh my god. Someone's a Marvel fanboy.
It'll get broken up very soon, I promise. Damn. I thought that, like, First Avenger made me really emotional, and then I watched Winter Soldier, and I was just like, damn. Steve Rogers' life sucks ass.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine being from a different time and waking up and everything I know is gone, and just my best friend is being brainwashed and, like, fighting me. The person that I love is, like, on her deathbed because she's, like, 300, no, not 300 years old.
I'm like, what?
300 movie challenge! Like, 80, 90 years old at this point, and I guess, like, this was kind of the turning point for me with, like, Steve Rogers as a character, because, like, before this he was always like, just, okay, we have to do like this, and this is the right way to do it. But then I feel like in this movie, everything he knew was just shattered. And I guess I could relate to this because this was kind of my experience in college. I think I've told this story of I used to be a STEM major, and then I had this kind of, like, those school existential crises where I'm just like, I'm not actually good at this, but I don't want to screw my life up.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of like my version of everything I knew was shattered because of, like, how things were built up for me, like with my peers and things like that. And just, I guess that whole thing just kind of took me back to a time where I was struggling a lot, and I could just put myself in Steve Rogers' like perspective, and just, like, seeing how much he cares about Bucky, like, to the point where he doesn't really want to fight him. Like, not in a romantic way, but, a friend kind of way, because I feel that way about you guys.
Aww.
And I'm just like, if I had to fight my best friend, would I throw the fight? Probably. So just, I don't know, I really liked just seeing this kind of vulnerability with Steve Rogers, and just seeing how he reacted to everything he knew just being thrown out the window, and trying to figure out how he can move past it, because the fact that he is able to move past and become a stronger person but still keep his values was just very. It hit very personal to me.
Yeah.
Dang. I'm not gonna have anything to say when we get to where I put it.
Spoilers, jeez. It's not quite to my top 15. Again, it's near where I have Thor Ragnarok, which I mean that's true with you as well. But yeah, I think I specifically I remember because the directors Joe and Anthony Russo directed this, and this was actually the first thing they directed with the MCU. So they directed this, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. And I was listening to an interview, and they specifically say how their approach to movies is, okay, let's take a character and then throw him in a situation that flips his worldview upside down. And that is this movie, right?
Yeah.
So, and that kind of, that's really interesting in that idea, and, you know, the movies that they have made are overall, like, really damn good. And, yeah, I think it's basically everything that we liked about the first Captain America movie, but even better. So, yeah.
So I actually have Thor Ragnarok now.
Okay. Oh, jeez.
Really, I also didn't know quite how I was gonna feel going into this. I kind of just felt like alright with Thor as a character, and I did like Loki a little bit, but not to the extent of other people, definitely. And then this movie happened, and I feel like I finally understood Thor in this movie.
Yeah, so did I.
Yeah, me too.
Because previous to this, I was like, okay, he's the son of Odin. Okay, cool. He's throwing his hammer. Okay.
Oh, don't forget God of Thunder.
Oh yeah, he's the god of thunder. But here you actually see him in like a comedic setting. And it's, I guess, not to the... Or rather, it's kind of his worldview also got turned upside down, but while Captain's was more in a very, like, serious, mind-numbing way, Thor's was just comedic.
Yeah.
Because he went from being, like, this high and mighty, like, king to being just, like, basically a gladiator in a fight, and then the thing where there's so many scenes in this movie where I think back to it and I just start laughing, like when he like saw Hulk in the arena and he just was so happy.
Yeah.
Yes, this is great. Nothing horrible is gonna happen now, and then Hulk still beats him up.
Yeah.
And, like Loki's reaction to that.
Actually, you know the line where he's like, "Oh, it's a friend from work" or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That was apparently, actually, there was some, like, kid from the Make-A-Wish Foundation on the set, and he suggested that line.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so, I that was another interview I saw, but, yeah.
It's just, yeah. It brings a tear to my eye, just how hilarious it is.
Yeah. Again, like I said, I really like it too, it's just not quite up there at the list for me.
Number 12.
Yes, so... Let's see, so far in terms of Marvel movies, Maya's talked about Captain America First Avenger and The Winter Soldier, and you've both talked about Thor Ragnarok. Now for me to talk about one. My number 12, and I know this movie's going to be talked about again, Spider-Man Homecoming.
I'm gonna keep quiet.
Yeah,
so,
me
yeah,
too.
so I knew that. I've said before that I was never a huge Spider-Man fan. I thought he was, you know, fine, but I never got super invested in him. And even with, like, the earlier 2000s movies that we saw, again, I thought those are overall decent, but, like, I was never super into them. And then you get this little boy child, and he's just super likable, super relatable. It's a story that's, you know, it's a simple story, right? But it works in terms of what the characters are going through. It's a very realistic kind of environment to me, where it's portraying, like, average people, but in, you know, a superhero world. The whole stuff with, like, the school and, like, the Captain America PSAs, I'm just like, this is absolutely what a school would do. And I also really like Michael Keaton as Vulture in this.
Yes.
And that car ride is so fucking intense. I still think that's probably the most intense scene in the entire MCU.
Yeah, it is.
And it's just so good, and he just does such a great job as portraying this, like, honest, this really normal person that's still really fucking terrifying. So yeah, that's that, and then again, Spider-Man just being a great character as well. And the other characters also, you know, I mean, they don't really feature prominently, but they're all enjoyable as well. It's funny, it's entertaining. It's, to me, this is like, I am not like I don't get emotional from this movie, but like kind of outside of that, this is like as good as something could possibly be. Kind of, that's how I see it. So, yeah.
Okay, my number 12. I might be alone on this one. It's, I guess, for a very specific, there's a story. So, my number 12 is The Sixth Sense.
Interesting.
Oh.
So when I was younger, my mom would watch movies and she would tell me about what she watched. And this was one of the stories that I really liked a lot. Like the way she described it was like there was this guy who was helping this kid, like, and he sees dead people, and it's like this kind of father-son-ish style journey between like Bruce Willis's character and the kid, and it's been mentioned many times that death is a very interesting topic for me, and this will come up again. But I think the thing that got me for this movie was the fact that we all knew the twist. We all knew it from other references, just pop culture, and I'd known it very well from my mom. But actually watching this movie and reflecting on it, like, I still think about it, and I don't think I really got that across when we were talking about it, since this is actually also pretty early on as well. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I kind of also saw myself in like this kind of position where I would feel like I would be the kid sometimes, and I would be looking for someone to help me. But kind of implied by the reason I selected this, the person that I'm looking for isn't necessarily going to be there. And I think just seeing how Bruce Willis helps this kid kind of come to terms with himself, and then through that journey he comes to terms with his own struggles, I think that it left a very big impression on me. Kind of like how when my mom would finish telling the story, I was always thinking about it. I was like, oh, but why was the guy dead? Why did he come back? And that kind of question, it always lingers for me. And it's an interesting concept. At least it's not the most unique concept, but I think the way M. Night Shyamalan actually handled this concept was pretty good. And I think it definitely got the emotions across very well.
Considering how well he's handled several other movie concepts.
Yeah. Let's not talk about the rest of his career.
Let's just talk about The Sixth Sense.
Let's just pretend this is his only movie that he ever made,
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
fine with that. I mean, I don't have a personal connection with it like you do, but I think it's a good movie, so I don't know what else to say.
Same. Yeah.
Okay.
I still, there are a couple scenes that stand out, one of which is like the red doorknob and everything, and the use of red and stuff within it. So yes, definitely a solid movie.
Yeah.
Well, I think Mai's already talked enough about this movie, but I had The Winter Soldier.
Is there anything you want to add?
Is there anything to add? Oh, I appreciated, like, because in the Avengers movie, you don't really see much of Black Widow's character and stuff, but I appreciated how in Winter Soldier, you could see more of her instead of just being, like, the only woman.
Yeah, that's true.
In the Avenger team, she, like, actually, you see more of her personality and stuff, and like her sense of humor, especially when she's talking to like Steve and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I miss her.
Well, considering my poured out her heart when she talked about it, then I feel like that's kind of all we have to say.
Yeah, that is kind of
Okay. So.
That's what happens when you keep things a secret.
Oh well, oh well. Okay, so my number 11. This is a movie that I saw when I was fairly young,
Okay.
and I knew I liked it, but like that's kind of it. So this is one of the movies that I was like, I really want to see this again, because it's one of those that also again a lot of people really like, and I wasn't kind of in that group of people. So I really want to see it again, kind of see it. And also it's one of those movies where I'm like, as a kid, I just didn't really get it. Right? And so I saw it again, really like it. Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. This is the one I like the most. Now, and this is actually, so my number 16 was Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring.
Oh, okay.
So this is why I specifically put that to 16 and put War of the Planet of the Apes at 15, because I'm like, I'm going to be talking about the series anyway. So,
Right.
yeah. But I think they're both very, very, very good. I think I put Two Towers like just one small step below them. But, yeah, so Two Towers actually just missed my like a lot category, so that still hides to like, you know, the Planet of the Apes movies holding that title. But, yeah, it's just, you know, it's a 4-hour movie that doesn't feel too long. Already, that's insanely impressive. And
especially considering all sorts of other movies that we've seen
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that have felt like 3 hours long, but are actually only 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And well, I'm sure we'll be talking about those in the next video. But yeah, so it's the story's interesting, the characters are interesting, the action is great, especially for 2003. It just looks really pretty. The landscapes are great. It's just it's again, it's a really good just kind of climax kind of finale of a trilogy movie that ties everything up. The emotion is great in terms of, you know, this is kind of like considering how long these movies were, it's almost kind of like a mini MCU in a sense, right? Because you have so many characters and so many moving parts that all kind of come together, and it's just how it feels like it, and it's just a really, really, really satisfying movie that just, you know, brings everything together. And it's just, I again, after I watched it, we watched it again, because again, I'd seen these movies when I was young, and I remember I was like, I like this, but I didn't have that connection. Now I'm like, okay, I have the connection, I get it now, right? I get why so many people really, really love these movies, and I'm maybe not quite there to the point of like I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan, but like as a movie, I really like this movie. I like the others too. So yeah.
Cool.
I also had them up. They're not in the top 15, but yeah.
Yeah, they're in like, well, okay. The one Return of the King is in like a lot. I don't remember where I put the other two, but I think they're in like somewhere. Mostly because Frodo, I can't get over Frodo's freaking character. Okay.
Refer to said video to hear all about my
Baggage
feelings
over
about
Frodo. So, I guess speaking of characters, let's talk about a character that is pretty interesting and good. So Valen talked about Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump was, as mentioned, very close. It didn't quite make it. Because I ended up putting The Curious Case of Benjamin Button here.
Oh my god.
So
We're actually tied on that.
oh, really? So let's talk about it together then.
Oh boy.
All
I
right.
thought I was gonna be the only one to put this here. I guess I'll go first because, as we know from the video, I thought that this was an entirely different movie in the beginning, and I was not looking forward to seeing this for the longest time. And then I actually saw it, and I was like, dang, why was I so scared? If it hadn't been for that one, like, scene, of all the scenes to pick, I don't know why they picked that one to show at the Academy Awards, but...
Yeah, that's not a good scene to show.
No, because it gave the completely wrong impression in my mind. But the visuals were spectacular and everything, and then the characters, too, especially... The scene that always stays with me is the ending, where
yeah.
you see the floodwaters of like Katrina and everything like engulfing the clock, and then you see like him talking about like all the different people and stuff, and it's just
To go off of that, the scene that sticks with me is like the one right before it, which is Daisy is holding a baby Benjamin Button, and he's about to die. And he just looks at her, and the way he looked at her, I was just like, wow, he's satisfied with his life.
Yeah.
And this is a very interesting, I guess, maybe psychology like kind of study where you examine someone's life in reverse, and that's not really a concept that you really think about. It's like you're born as a baby, you become an adult, and then you become old, and then inevitably you die. But it's weird because like in the beginning I was just like, okay, this is an interesting like gimmick, and then I was also thinking of I don't remember the name of that movie. It's the movie where it's Robin Williams super aging really fast. Jack, yes. I like that movie too. Made me cry when I was like 7. But I originally made a lot of comparisons to that, but like it it's still different. But as I kept watching it, I was like, this is so weird, because the thing is that when you're old and when you're really small, it's actually not that different.
Yeah. Like, that movie puts that into perspective, because a lot of the things that happen when he's really old, you can also equate to him being really young, too.
Yeah.
And it's those middle years where you're kind of just like, oh, you can't really even tell, like, how old he is, because it doesn't matter. And then as he gets older, then even though theoretically he's become a baby, it doesn't matter, basically.
I think Daisy said something about that. Like, there was a line where she was saying something about, like, it wasn't really much different how he, like, was born and how he died, because his life was still pretty much the same. It's just that there were these different challenges, because as a quote-unquote teenager, he was interested in this older woman, and he, like, tried to date her, and then he could never really be with Daisy until, like, they were both middle-aged, and after that he became younger, she became older. And I guess something else I really find interesting is how they met, because she's young, he's old, and then in the end she does also kind of become like the person who takes care of him, after he kind of like, he didn't take care of her, but he was like her friend. And I mean, I don't think it's I think we did talk about how we weren't really a big fan of Jenny in like Forrest Gump, and at first I thought I wouldn't like Daisy, but I feel like we got to know her in a way where the way she acted made more sense.
Yeah.
It wasn't
agree
like
with that, because I also did not think that I was going to like Daisy either, but I guess it's because even though she made certain decisions and stuff, you knew where she was going with those decisions. While with Jenny, you weren't completely sure why she was going through with some decisions.
And yeah, I get it. Like, Jenny was abused and Daisy isn't. She's just very ambitious and she has a different track. But I guess the thing is that they presented Daisy in a way where she is very flawed, but you can still sympathize with her.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Benjamin Button.
This is not the movie I thought we would tie on.
I know, right?
I have purposely remained silent during this conversation.
Okay.
So
we go to you, Valen.
Yeah, like to my number 10. Okay. My number 10, a movie that I saw as a kid, really liked it as a kid, still really like it now, The Incredibles.
Yay!
That almost made it. I think it's like really close for me, but I also agree. It's a very solid movie.
Yes, as a kid, of course, I liked it in terms of like the action and the humor and stuff like that, and that's still really good. Especially, I can appreciate the animation more now, especially again considering how like the humans looked in the previous Pixar movies. But now I can appreciate a lot more the family dynamic and how this is not like a good family, but okay, it's not a like ideal family, right? But they work through legitimate problems, and it's clear that they are a flawed family and they go through things, but they do have that cohesion. It's the kind of sense which I think is especially important for kids, where it's like sometimes stuff is like not that great, but you can and you will go through it, right?
Yeah.
And so, because that's something that bothers me about some kids' movies, where it's like, oh, see, everything's happy and wonderful, and it's always going to be perfect. And then if you're a kid and that doesn't happen, you feel like cheated, right?
Yeah.
So this is not that. And the relationship with the family dynamic it's very believable, it's very realistic, even though they're all, superpowered weirdos. And again, it's just a fun movie. And also, I really like Syndrome. I think he's a really compelling...
Syndrome is a very good villain, and I also appreciate the fact you talked about it a little bit, but this is a superhero movie that is concentrated on a family.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Which is a really interesting take on it.
Yeah, and it's also like, I think Valen, you mentioned it in the review, but it's also one of the very few movies where there's no like, oh, they're like going to get a divorce, or they're like estranged from each other, but then they just fall back in love in this movie. No, they have their problems, but they work through it together. And it's not like unbelievable problems.
Yeah, the silly animated kids movie handles relationship drama better than pretty much every single romantic movie that we've seen. So, yeah.
Great job, guys.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I will say, because we didn't see it for the challenge, because fuck Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, but Incredibles 2 is very good. I don't think it's as good as this, but it's very solid. And yeah, so I still want to say that I want to see more of this world. I want to see more characters. I want to see like more of the side characters, like other superpowers and stuff like that. So I want them to continue with this. Maybe not necessarily with more and more movies. But again, I know I mentioned that they should have a TV show with this stuff, and I still stand by that. And yeah, I just really enjoy the movie. Still think it's really, really great. And there we go. That's my number 10.
Make a TV show so Valen can binge it every day.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so number 10 for me is, I promise there will be another break after this, Avengers Infinity War. What? Okay, I don't think I said this during the discussion, because, like, we were all kind of just confused chickens without heads, but, I originally was, like, kind of like, okay, this, I think we mentioned that, when we were, talking about which were our most highly anticipated movies in the last, I think, like 2-3 years of the challenge, that you both said Infinity War, but I didn't.
Yeah.
Because the thing is that I guess, like, I wasn't really sure how they would handle having so many characters in one movie, since that can get very, very convoluted even in long-running manga. I'm talking about like Naruto, which kind of fucked it up, Bleach, which kind of fucked it up. So I've been blindsided many times by ensemble casts that are just not handled correctly. Infinity War does not suffer from this because they give everyone something to do, and they don't like
focus on one group of people.
Yeah, and they don't sideline people that you shouldn't sideline. Like, they have like Tony Stark as like the leader, quote unquote, of like him, Doctor Strange, and Peter Parker, and then you still have Quill, and then how like Thor breaks off from the group and takes Rocket and Groot, and then you have like Captain America's group, and then he meets up with like T'Challa's group. And I think the way that they actually handled this with, like, you always are following someone that you know very well, but it's for different reasons to the same goal. And I don't know, like, this I feel like is handled very poorly in a lot of other ensemble cast media for some reason. Maybe it's because like the author doesn't really know what they're doing, and it is very hard to handle like more than a couple of characters in one movie, and I think they handled it pretty well. I mean, sure, maybe you don't get to see a couple of characters all that much, but they wouldn't be the focus. And another thing that I was also worried about was I was worried that when the death scene happened, I wouldn't react because, again, with other media, the death thing is like, if there are too many people who die, then it can also be labeled as shock value or just redshirting a bunch of characters for no reason. And they handled it pretty well in this regard too. Basically, I'm saying that this kind of turned what I thought it would do upside down in a good way. Because I have these worries about media where I've been cheated before, basically, by certain concepts, and I'm very suspicious going into those. So that's kind of why I had my reservations going into Infinity War. But by the end of it, I thought it was handled very well with all of the characters, and it set up Endgame very well, and it did very well with like the characters that it had and the ones that they focused on like just a tiny bit.
I think kind of to add as to why I think this movie works in terms of the ensemble cast more than others is I think there's two main reasons. One is that they don't like force like all of the interactions.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So it's like they kind of
It makes sense how people met up with each
right,
other.
and not only that, but the other thing that I think it does really well is that it basically it like you said, it assigns people to groups, and those groups have a thing to do, right?
Yeah.
Because the other problem I think is they basically try to have all of the characters doing one thing.
Yeah.
Right? And then when that happens, it's much easier to have characters slip through the cracks. Where here, it's since everyone's kind of split up into groups, and each group has its own task. You have to within each task, you have like 3 or 4 characters, and that's totally manageable. So yeah, I think that's those are the main things from that.
I also appreciate that because that's something that, like as a writer, I've learned to do kind of recently with like our thing that we do. So
Yeah, it's definitely a tough thing, but once you get it, then you get it.
just try not to make too many people do the same thing. It gets ugly. Trust me, it gets ugly.
Okay. Tara, you're number 10.
My number 10 is Forrest Gump.
Oh,
Actually.
okay.
Oh, hi.
So we break from the Avengers for a bit. So I watched Forrest Gump for the first time in middle school, and I guess similar to Fallon's reaction, I thought it was pretty good, but I didn't think of it as amazing at the time, even though I watched it in a history class, which you would think that would enhance the experience, but now looking back, I understand why I watched it in history class, but I guess I didn't understand it that much at the time. But then rewatching it, I was like, I'm so happy. Like just the way that they were able to like, because Photoshop wasn't, well, it was around during the time, but I don't think the term photoshopping was around back then. But the way they were able to like get him into like a lot of footages of people, like actual TV footage and everything, and then also just like the emotions, because bare bones, Forrest Gump as a character is very like humble and simplistic, but it works so well in like the complicated world and story that like happened and stuff. And you just see all the like little Easter eggs and everything, and you're just like, I can see how he's going through this and it's just very interesting to see how he gets from like point A to point B like you can like track everything, like this led to this led to this, and it's just yeah.
I think going back to the effects, like it's one of those things for me where I was watching it and I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat, but then I was like, wait a minute, this is 1994.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
because like if these effects were made now, they'd still be like they wouldn't be like groundbreaking, but they'd be good effects, and you'd kind of just take it for granted, right? But
Yeah.
saying that's like, wait, shit, this came out 25 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like, damn, that's really impressive. So yeah,
So impressive, like how they were able to get like each of the time periods and everything.
Yeah.
Ah.
hmm okay. My number 9 was my number 9. Oh yeah. Okay.
You didn't remember.
Yeah, so my number 9 is kind of an interesting movie because it's one of those where, like, there's kind of one thing that pushed it up to this level. Like,
Okay.
everything else in it is very solid, but it would not be in my top 15. It would not be number 9 without one thing. And that movie is Inception.
Oh.
Hmm.
So, it's just overall, it's a really solid movie, right? It's a very
Yeah.
interesting story with interesting characters. A lot of the effects, especially the fact that a lot of the effects are actually practical effects, is very
yeah.
impressive. It's just visually very neat. But the thing that pushes this for me, and it's really not that big of a focus in the movie, and I know I mentioned this in the discussion, it was this idea that you have created this world that is exactly what you want,
Mm-hmm.
but you know it's not real. And that's sort of living with yourself with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
The fact that the main guy and his wife, they had basically gone down to the lowest level of the dream, and they had their perfect world, but it wasn't real. And how you kind of deal with that? Do you want to lose yourself to the illusion, or do you just want to say, no, this isn't, even though it's wonderful, this just is not what's actually happening? It's kind of like, it's kind of Matrix-y in a way, but it's
Yeah.
handled, I think, more subtly and more character and emotion focused than The Matrix did it. And I don't know, just that for some reason just really resonated with me. So on top of everything else, I think with everything else, like this would still be a very solid movie and maybe be pushing, near like number 15-ish or so on the list for me. But with that added step, it pushed this into noticeably higher of me getting really like emotionally kind of connected with especially the main guy. I forgot his name. I know his name.
Cobb.
Yeah. So that's kind of what really worked for me, and it's again, besides that, it's just a very, very solid movie throughout, and that extra piece just pushed it right up into number 9.
I was thinking before, I was like, man, like Inception used to be my favorite movie, but it didn't make it into the top 15.
Yeah, it didn't make it for me either,
wow.
but I'm very happy that you brought it up.
Okay, good.
Because I remember I saw that movie like a couple times even before this challenge, and every single time it was just, I started noticing more and more things. It's just one of those movies where even if you've watched it all the way through once, it's a movie that you could watch over and over again and discover something new with it.
Yeah, I feel like you shouldn't just watch it once, because then you're just kind of cheating yourself.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be a basic bitch. Number 9 is Die Hard with a Vengeance.
I didn't think I would be the only one to have this up here.
Okay, so I had this in my top 3 for a very long time, and I can be a basic bitch too. Sometimes I just want to watch a neat action movie with good practical effects and entertaining characters, and that was everything this was, and it just subverted all of our expectations, which was, okay, it's going to be dumb and stupid and forgettable, whatever, okay. But we were so hooked on this movie, and I always remember that, and I always remember how we were always like, oh, is it going to be like the next Die Hard? Like,
yeah.
surprising us, and I can't dissociate myself from that. And, it's just, I feel like for me, it's like Samuel L. Jackson's like best performance. It's at least my favorite performance. And yeah, I just like this movie. There's not much to say.
Yeah.
We need to watch this movie again.
Well, first thing, we need to also watch the first 2 Die Hard movies.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we should do like a marathon of the first 3 movies. Like
I
for
agree.
that.
You
But-
should do that, especially when you come over, Valen.
Yes. But what was I gonna say? Oh, yeah. So I said that Die Hard was my favorite for like 100 films, and so the one that broke that was Return of the King. So that was finally the one where I'm like,
okay.
I finally have something better than Die Hard, and that was, I believe it's 103 films apart or something. So yeah.
Wow.
So it's kind of sad though that like literally nothing in the 90s or like very early 2000s beat it out for me at
It's
least.
okay.
Right.
But anyway, Tara, you're number 9.
My number 9 is Infinity War.
Oh boy.
So I also agree with for the whole fact of how they were able to get like the ensemble of characters and everything to work out. I also feel like they did a very good job with showing all the character motivations, and also because I feel like usually when they do these ensemble things, there's some things that like are canonly true, but like just for the sake of the plot or something, they just like skip over it or something. But they didn't do that here, because, for instance, they could have very easily have like just made like Iron Man and Captain America just become like just work together for this and stuff, but they don't actually. And there's only one scene where they're together, and you can still see that they're still mad over what happened with Civil War and everything. So just the fact that they were able to like keep all those little details together too, and for so many characters to make it work, and for a lot of them too, they're meeting like new groups of people, but you understand why they're meeting these new groups of people, and also understanding these new dynamics that they're making. Like one I can think of is like Stephen Strange with Iron Man and Peter. Like that strangely worked actually, and I would have never
worked.
Strangely.
I really wish they threw in like a Sherlock Holmes like line in there. But
Okay, actually, just to
Sherlock and Sherlock.
Right,
It's
just
Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, so just to go off of that, actually, there was an interview where Tom Holland specifically said he was trying to get them to put that into the script, but Benedict Cumberbatch was like, "No, that's dumb," and like basically didn't do it.
So Tom Holland had the same idea.
Yeah.
No, that would have been perfect. Like, there's that, and then there's also, like, Thor with the Guardians of the Galaxy characters. Like, that strangely worked out, too. And it was really hilarious and everything. So you have, like, all these groups and everything, and you just see how they work, and it's like, it's very happy.
Okay.
Well, not all happy, obviously, but...
Yeah.
Because, yeah, to counter all those, like, happy scenes, you have the...
Ending, yeah.
Yeah. Which kind of just kills you.
Yeah.
Literally.
Literally.
Okay, well, my number 8 is Rogue One.
Oh, yeah. I kind of expected it to be on this list.
Yeah.
And again, I really am pretty sure I'm fairly alone in thinking that this is my favorite Star Wars movie. And again, I said it in the discussion, I totally recognize there's issues with some of the pacing earlier on. Some of the character stuff is not that well explained. And there are a good amount of things that, like, especially as, like, a casual, like, Star Wars viewer, you might kind of, like, not fully understand. But again, I've said this before, I've seen this movie, I think, now 4 or 5 times. And every time I think, I'm not going to like this as much as the last time. And I still like it as much as the last time. So, because again, I know that there's issues with it, but, like, I just, especially when it gets, like, halfway through, and especially once they get to Scarif, it's just, I get so invested, and I get so tense, and so just to this movie. And the Vader scene is the best scene in all of the movies. The whole ending, just in general, in terms of talking about Infinity War, is kind of a similar dynamic, honestly. And just, again, all the little things thrown in there with, like, the connections to Star Wars Rebels and how it leads right up to the first movie and how it kind of changes the beginning of the first movie. It's just, I don't know. Like, this feels, I said this before, it feels like people really, really, really had good ideas and really wanted to tell a passionate story instead of just, all right, shit, we got to make this kind of movie, right?
Right,
so, yeah, I'm really excited to see I really want them to do other things with Star Wars because, again, as of now, we have The Rise of Skywalker coming later this year, and I'm excited for that, but at the same time, I kind of want something just brand new again. And so I'm very curious, and they've announced now that the next Star Wars trilogy is going to start in 2022, which sounds like a long time away, but it's really not that far away.
No.
And so I'll just be very curious to see where they go from here. And we also, oh my god, also later this year we have the Return of the Clone Wars show. We have the Mandalorian starting. So there's like all this new shit that I'm just like, I'm so excited. But yeah, so this movie though, it just gets me, and I don't really know what it specifically is that just hooks me in, especially for that last like, half of the movie. But it does, and here it is at number 8.
Yay. Actually, when you brought up the Avengers thing, I forgot to mention another thing that I really found really gripping was the Thanos scene where they're trying to get the glove off and they almost got it, but you can understand like all the character motivations and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I won't. Well, I think everyone knows what happened in that scene, but regardless.
Yeah.
Okay, mine.
Number 8. I Am Legend.
Oh.
Oh.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I knew a decent amount going into this movie, mostly just Will Smith was in it, and there was a sad scene involving his puppy, but there were some things I didn't expect. Like the Shrek scene was very unexpected. But okay, so this movie is technically, I guess, like a zombie movie, but like not really. And I had a very brief phase where I followed when Cry played the Walking Dead game, Season 1, and I also watched him play The Last of Us, and I guess I just got a lot of vibes from this movie about, like, from those games, because, like, even though there wasn't, like, there wasn't, like, a father-child, father-daughter, actually, relationship in I Am Legend, it was more like, I guess, just the idea of being so alone and not really knowing what else is out there. I think just the way this movie was made was very good. I think Val and we had this very long conversation about it during the actual commentary for this movie, but sometimes I don't like flashbacks, but this movie handled them very well, where it was very distinct when it was a flashback, because I mean there are other people in the flashbacks. It's not just Will Smith and his dog, and that's it. There are other people, and you can tell his state of mind is very different because of how he acts and stuff. And I just thought it was a very interesting, way to portray this kind of narrative, because usually with zombie-ish movies, you have a group. But for most of the movie, Will Smith is all by himself, and I'm very happy that we watched the good ending of this movie. Otherwise, I don't really know how I would feel if we watched the kind of shitty ending where he dies for no reason, because it does introduce a certain element of just it makes you question what you think, and I think Valen's going to talk about this later, so I'm going to just leave it off here.
You are wise.
So, let's move on.
What is... So, now it's my turn to talk about Spider-Man.
Oh, God.
I actually... When I heard that we were going to watch the Spider-Man movies, I was like, but I didn't... For some reason, it didn't register in my mind until we watched Civil War that I was like, wait a minute, there's another Spider-Man movie after this, and it's not going to star Tobey Maguire. And that filled me with instant joy, especially when we were watching Civil War battle, and he, was cracking jokes and giving references and everything, and I was like, I like this Spider-Man, unlike Tobey. Mopey Maguire, yeah. Where the one, happy thing he did was that random dance.
Oh.
That's like the only time I remember him being happy, because every other time he was just like mopey about Mary Jane being with some other guy and everything. And don't even get me started on Mary Jane in those
Yeah.
movies. But
No, let's just not.
Trauma.
the interesting thing about this Spider-Man, though, is that they did not do an origin story, which I'm very happy for, because in this challenge we saw, like, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man and stuff. And even if you didn't see those movies recently, I feel like everyone knows, like, the general of how Spider-Man became Spider-Man and stuff. It's a spider bite. It could have literally happened in someone's basement for all we it doesn't have to be as epic as, oh my god, this is how he... No. The Iron Man, it makes sense why you find out. You have to learn about his origin story.
Mm-hmm.
Captain America, it also makes sense. The Hulk, it makes sense. You don't need to learn how a kid got a spider bite. At least, once you've seen it once, I feel like you can kind of just copy and paste it and be like, it probably was also a similar incident and stuff, so... Valen already talked about a bunch of things with, like, the villain and stuff, and I agree, Vulture was very... Just the way that they made, like, a normal guy with no superpowers evil is kind of astonishing, especially considering all the other villains that we saw. Like, the Iron Man villains were very forgettable.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we talked about it in the discussion that this is like one of our favorite Iron Man movies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The first Iron Man 2 and 3 are eh. But here Iron Man is like, you actually appreciate his character a lot, and I feel like this is the movie too where I saw him grow the most.
Mm-hmm.
Like just him talking to like Peter Parker and everything.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we're on to my number 7.
Yeah.
Okay, here it is.
Wait,
Madagascar 3.
only number 7?
Yeah, it's only number 7, which might be the biggest surprise of this, but it's number 7.
Yeah, quite
Lucky
surprising.
number
at least
7.
to me.
Is there any more that I have to say about this that I didn't
No,
say
I
for the
don't.
thing? It's fucking hilarious. That's it. It's fucking hilarious.
I actually recently rewatched the scene with the fireworks song in
Oh,
the
yeah.
background.
Yeah.
That just the way that they like did that scene and everything and how all the characters interact is just, that alone was really
I know, it's
cool.
so good. Like, it's just I still, it still blows my mind that fucking Madagascar 3 is the really good one. It's like, what? It's like, no, I get it. I remember. I was like, I remember. I didn't even know there was a third one. And I was like in college and I was bored and I was like looking at some movies. I was like, hey, they made a third one? Huh. Well, I like the first one. The second one's pretty good. Ah, what the hell? I mean, even if this one kind of sucks, it's not going to be like horrible and it's only 90 minutes. I'm not going to hate it. And I'm just like, loved it. I'm like, what? I'm still like confused as hell as like how this is the one that I just love, but I do. I love this movie. That's all I got.
Play a clip.
with Dubois.
Yes. Oh my god. Dubois is so good. Ah! Okay. I don't want to gush over this anymore because I'm just going to basically repeat myself. So, yeah. Moving on to someone else's number 7. Mine's number 7.
The Lego Movie.
Oh, okay.
I have the Lego
Really?
Movie here.
We're tied again?
Oh, really?
Why?
Okay, that was not something that was planned at all.
Good lord.
Oh,
All right, let's talk about the Lego Movie.
I'll just say right now, I have it, again, very high, but not in my top 20, so, or top 15, so, yeah, but I guess I can contribute a little bit here and there.
So, I guess I'll start first. The reason that it, like, because when you're watching it and stuff, you're just like, oh, okay, it's just like a normal adventure thing. You don't really think too much into it and stuff, but then you get to that plot twist where you realize that it's a kid playing pretend and, like, all the pieces fall, like in place and everything, and you've realized some things like early on in the film like make perfect sense that maybe when you first watched it you're like, why did they do it like that? Kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff. And it's, again, the rewatchability for this film is amazing. And then another thing too that hit me personally is like the whole thing with like imagination versus like this is how things should be and stuff. And the whole idea of just like playing pretend. Like, I don't know even how to put it into words, but just like the whole scene with like the kid and his father just hit me and stuff. And then also like Emmett's like speech at the end and stuff too. And the idea of you don't have to, you are your own chosen one. You don't need a prophecy or anything to like tell you that you're a special.
Yeah, Anakin.
And everything.
God damn it, Anakin.
They had a Star Wars cameo too.
Yeah.
And a reference.
Yeah, I remember I said that the twist in this is, I think, like, I know I've said this several times, this whole, like, 3 things in a twist, right? And it did the 2 main important ones. It's not that it was, like, you couldn't necessarily... Well, okay. Again, I think we mentioned that we kind of predicted that at least, or I did, because I hadn't seen this before, that, you know, I thought there was going to be some reference to the fact that they are Legos and there's, like, an outside world, right? But then, yeah, that is, like, not, like, super, like, whoa, I totally didn't see this coming. It's not like that, but it totally expands the story, both in terms of what will happen and what did happen. So, yeah, that aspect of it is extremely good.
To not, like, repeat, I'm gonna go off of, like, 2 other thoughts that I had. One is just the fact that this is a Lego movie, and it knows.
Yeah.
Because the way this movie is just so creative, like it gets the point of Legos, because like I'm sure like you guys also played with Legos a bunch when you were children, because I played with Legos a shit ton when I was a kid. I used to make like houses, I used to make food out of Legos, I was a very lonely child. I didn't have friends because I was very withdrawn, and I used to sit at home and play Legos all day long, because that's the only comfort that I had besides like TV. And just the whole idea of this is a Lego movie, and it's using the fact that the whole point is to be creative, and it goes just all out with it. It makes all these interesting looking buildings and characters, and
even like the horse is just like thrown.
The gags in this movie are so funny because, like, these were things that I did. Like, you know, the horse, you can take out the little peg and you can put the person on the horse. I was geeking out when I first saw this movie. But this leads into the other thing that I like. This movie is for everyone. You don't have to just be a child to, like, understand the message of this movie. You can also be an adult. You can see, as an adult, both sides of it, and you can be both at once, where maybe half of your life, like I have, like, you know, a job, a very like straightforward desk job, that's my structure, but then I go home and I write, I draw. That's me playing with Legos again. I'm still a child at heart, but I put on this mask of being, like, you know, an adult. And this if you haven't seen this movie, I don't know what you're doing with your life. Go watch it.
Everything is awesome.
Yeah.
Now we go back.
Yeah, this is weird. I can't believe you tied both like twice. That's so random.
I know. That's so weird.
Yeah. Because I was thinking like there's like no way we're gonna tie with anything. Everything's gonna be totally different or whatever. But no. But speaking of ties, my number 6 is A Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Oh.
So I agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
And basically I liken this to Forrest Gump a lot. But to me, Forrest Gump, you know, it's a very serious story that does have emotional moments, but ultimately it is a fun movie. Right?
Yeah.
This is not really a fun movie.
No.
And it's one of those movies where it was weird because it's a pretty long movie, and while watching it, I remember thinking, like, about like halfway through, I was like, when did I start liking this? Like, I realized that I was really invested, but I don't know when I got really invested. It was really weird. It's like a slow burn where you just kind of get like lose yourself in this movie.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff in it that's like really small that I really like. And I remember I keep coming back to this scene in my head. It's the scene where Benjamin Button and Daisy have met kind of when they're, you know, closer to age, and they're outside at night and she's like dancing and he's watching her. I always remember that scene, and it's one of those scenes where it's like it's so small, right? There's no like great like plot revelation or anything like that happens there. It's a really good moment. And there's a lot of moments in this movie that are just like really nice emotional moments that you just kind of sink into the movie and you just experience what's going on. And yeah, I don't know. It really kind of hit me, but it wasn't a hit though. It was a very subtle kind of prodding throughout the entire movie. And then when I got to the end, I was like, shit, this was great. You know what I mean? But it was like, you know, it's weird. So I agree with all the specific things you mentioned, and I don't know. I really got into the story by the end of it. So yeah, it's all the way up at number 6.
Nice. Okay. Number 6 for me. I think I'm alone. I might be wrong. I don't know. Number 6 for me is Man on Fire.
It did not make my top 15.
No.
That's okay.
Yeah, it was fairly close for me, but yeah.
I don't know what I expected going into this movie.
I know.
I didn't expect to cry at the end.
Yeah.
I did not know what I was going to expect.
I think we all just kind of expect like, okay, it's gonna be some like kind of R-rated action movie, whatever.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, I talked a lot about Steve Rogers and how much I liked him and how moral he is, and then I also like John Creasy because of how amoral he is. Like, I don't know. He's a very complicated character, and I know that he's not for everyone, and like he has this quality to him that maybe isn't like, you know, you're not going to agree with him all the time, but I guess for me, it reminded me a lot of when I was a younger person and I was really into shonen anime. And it wasn't that he was like shonen, like, but I guess the way I felt about him was kind of like how I felt just watching, like, I don't really know how to describe it. I just felt like I could be invested in him, and I didn't need to justify why.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's not like the fact that he acts like a shonen protagonist, but he gives me that like really nice feeling of I can like this, and I don't need to tell anyone why I like this. So it was just him with like Dakota Fanning's character. It was really sweet, and then just the contrast between that and him being like, I have to go find this girl and I will do anything to get her back and to save her and to protect her. And that was his promise. And the part where the bear's name is Creasy killed me. This is like the type of movie where I didn't expect to feel the things that I did, because it's an action movie. It's about kidnapping. It has like, you know, like mafia people involved. It has some torture involved. And at the end of it, I just felt like I got to know a father, like a very flawed father, but a father. And I'm a sucker for father figures. So,
when you brought up Dakota Fanning, I remember this one comment that I don't know if it was in this movie or if it was more
in hide and seek.
It might have been hide and seek, but I was like, dang, Dakota Fanning has had some really traumatic like
roles.
Yeah.
Stuff. I don't even know if she acts anymore. Maybe she's like traumatized for life because of these roles.
I have no idea.
I don't know. But yeah, I still really like Man on Fire, and you can think I'm weird, but I don't care.
I don't. I mean, I really like it too.
Either.
What I don't understand, this got like pretty bad reviews. Like,
I don't know why.
Again, its Metacritic was like 40 or something, and it's like, even if you're not into the character, like, I don't see how you could think it's like that bad. So
I mean, it's a good action movie.
yeah, even just kind of, even if you are not invested in the character of the plot, it's a solid movie, and especially considering some other movies that have gotten way better scores than that, it's really weird to me that yeah, this was the movie that like a lot of people, because I remember I saw it as it's an R-rated action movie. It's not rated very well, and I specifically looked up because I was looking at R-rated movies at the time. I was looking at IMDb, like all the stuff about, you know, the R rating, and there's a lot of stuff in there where I'm like, this sounds really gross, right? It's talking about like the cutting fingers off and stuff like that. So I was like, I'm not gonna like this, and so that was what coming into it, and yeah, I mean, maybe not quite as much as you, but I do really like this movie as well.
Mm-hmm.
The gore factor definitely was something I had to deal with, but
That's okay.
otherwise, just I do agree though with like Creasy's character and stuff. Okay, so my number 6 is a movie that I know definitely will come up later
Mm-hmm.
in this, but it's Mulan, actually.
Oh,
I got really giddy for a second.
wait your
really
turn.
Sad to be giddy.
Wait your turn.
I will.
I know that this will definitely be brought up again.
Still talk about it, because, you know, you should talk about it.
You
and
have
I
your
don't
own
have
perspective.
Things to, like, you know, repeat.
So I watched this movie a lot as a kid and stuff, and I guess it was another thing where I really enjoyed this movie. I really enjoyed, like, obviously it's ranked higher than Finding Nemo, so that already is telltale sign of how much more I enjoyed it. But, it was a movie that I really enjoyed, and then even like having a pause and not watching it for a while and stuff, when I came back to it, I still really enjoyed it. I like all the character interactions and stuff, because usually for a bunch of these movies and stuff, the side characters are kind of forgettable, and you usually get caught up in the hero and the villain and stuff, but in here, the side characters take up like a good chunk of the movie, actually, and their being there is kind of essential to the movie, because if you didn't have like Mushu or like the army gang or Shang or anything, Mulan wouldn't have grown as much of a character and stuff, because I guess the thing is that she went from the beginning of being kind of a lonely outcast to getting the recognition of China. So it's just an amazing journey, and yeah, I know that it will be talked about more, but then I have a figurine of Mulan, so there you go.
Best girl.
Again, this movie will be talked about again, as you might guess, not by me. I do like the movie. I have nothing against the movie. I just like several things more than it. So to me, this is a movie where it's like, it's totally a decent, solid movie. I just did not personally connect with the stuff going on, but you know, it's not a bad movie at all. It's just, you know, this was my kind of middle of the road in terms of a good movie, right? That's kind of how I see it. And of course, if you have personal connections with stuff, then that would raise it higher. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, my number 5. And this is a movie that you both talked about already, and I was thinking like, oh, you're both gonna talk about this. I'm not gonna have anything to talk about, but I do have something to talk about, and I'm surprised none of you brought this up. So my number 5 is Infinity War.
Okay.
What did we
Neither of you talked about Thanos.
Oh,
Now,
I knew that you were going to talk about him.
I kind of knew that too, because like all I was gonna say was I hate Thanos, so
Yeah,
he can
so-
fucking die.
again, I agree with everything that we've already said in terms of the character interactions and not feeling too bloated or anything like that. And Thanos, to me, is actually kind of the opposite of Vulture. Vulture is a normal dude who has bad shit to happen to him, and he's trying to basically... He's very selfish in terms of his character, right? And that's... And I'm not saying selfish as, like, kind of, you know... It's not selfish in the, like, oh, I'm so selfish and I don't like you. No, it's like... But it is sort of... He's doing things for himself, right?
Yeah.
Where what I really... In Thanos, he's intimidating, he's imposing, he's has this very strong presence to him. He's very strong. But the thing that really got to me is that he's not selfish about it. Right? His plan is fucking terrible in terms of what he's trying to do, but he's not doing it for selfish reasons. He legitimately thinks this is what I have to do, and you can tell through the movie he doesn't really want to do it, but he still does. And I don't know, that was so interesting, because, like, to me, I just expected, I'm like, oh, but he's gonna, like, you know, want to, like, use this to seize control or whatever. No, right? At the end of the movie, after everyone's gone, at that last sort of scene where he, like, you see him kind of sitting down in, like, a sunset or sunrise in this new kind of planet, and he's just, like, kind of just sitting there content, is like, yeah, I did it. And it's just like, I don't know, that was, like, it just hit me, like, really interesting way. Because, again, you're not supposed to like the guy. I don't like him as a person. But as a villain, I don't know, it was just super interesting to me. And I also really like that he's not overpowered. Right?
Right.
Even with some of the stones, again, like the fight on Titan, right? They almost got him. He is very strong, very powerful, a big threat, but he's not invincible. And this is one thing that, like, a lot of superhero stuff kind of struggles with. Particularly, I found this for, like, the animated Superman show, is that the villains, they fall into two categories. One is, why are you losing to this guy? He's really pathetic, just, like, punch him in the face, right? So there's that, but then there's this dude who's, like, way too powerful, but then you have to, like, they basically, the heroes figure out the weakness, and then they beat him, right? And, like, that's a very common trope, and usually for the Superman show, it's just that, oh, he happens to have, like, kryptonite in some way, but then once they deal with that, then Superman can beat him. You know, and it gets kind of predictable, right? Even if it's different characters that have their own kind of thing with them, the plan and the path of defeating them is kind of the same. So, now that's not true for all of the stuff in the Superman show. There's a very big exception in Darkseid in that show, but anyway, these kind of, whatever. So, but yeah, I really, really like this in terms of as a villain here. And again, it's a very interesting contrast with 2 Vulture, where I like both of them a lot, but for very different reasons. So, as villains. And so, I don't know, I think that, and again, also, this is a movie where we knew people died, right?
Yeah.
We knew it was going to happen, and so that's always kind of a worry for a movie like this, kind of like what you said about The Sixth Sense, where you know the twist going in, so is it still going to leave an impact, right?
Yeah.
And this does.
Yeah.
So,
It's definitely
yeah,
does,
so that's definitely a plus for that.
Loki.
Yeah.
Still not over him dying.
Okay. Your number
Okay.
5.
Top 5. I struggled a lot with the top 5. Particularly between 4 and 5, but I thought it would only be fitting that I put this at 5 and the other one at 4. So I'm gonna talk about Spider-Man: Homecoming now. I'm gonna talk about my son. Okay, I don't think I talked about this during the discussion, but I'm gonna talk about this now, especially because recently I started watching some like not comparison videos, but just discussions about this whole thing. So I think I might have mentioned that I had watched the first Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man when I was younger, and at the time I really liked it. This is kind of like what happened to me with Spy Kids, though, and when we watched it again, I just felt very disappointed. And I wasn't really sure why. I guess now that I was older, I realized how, like, mopey Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is, and I realized how much I hated Mary Jane and how stupid and annoying she was. And then, really, Willem Dafoe was the only, like, awesome part of the movie. And, I don't, like, we got to Spider-Man 2. I thought, like, the character arc was better, but we still had Tobey Maguire.
And then Mary Jane was worse.
Yeah,
Mary Jane was much worse. And Doc Ock, great villain, but I have to kill this bug, so hold on a second.
Speaking of...
Ah, shit.
Can you keep that in?
Take on the arthropods.
I'll be right back. Let me flush this down the toilet.
Oh my god.
to meet.
Is she talking about the book or the movie?
She's gonna go. She's gonna get a copy of Spider-Man. It's like, fuck you, Mary Jane. Flush her down the toilet.
Oh my god. Like she has a Mary Jane doll.
For some reason. She had it just for this moment. She saved it all this time.
For this moment. Just like it's there with her Katniss Everdeen doll.
Which she's gonna.
Alright. What are you guys talking about?
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Continue.
Yeah, Doc Ock was a good villain, but I just fucking killed a silverfish just now. But I left the original Spider-Man, well, the two ones that we watched. I didn't ever watch the third one. I never watched the Andrew Garfield movies because after Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, the second viewing, I kind of wrote off Spider-Man for a little while. So I was very disappointed because I actually really liked Spider-Man, and I don't like spiders, like regular spiders, but then I heard our friend, a mutual friend of me and Tara, who talked about Homecoming very highly, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe this new Spider-Man is better.
I think you like it. Let me guess, you like him more.
Yes. Tom Holland is Peter Parker. He is Peter Parker. I don't really know what it is. I think maybe we talked about it. I don't remember. I have a very bad memory, but I just found him so relatable. The fact that he was allowed to screw up in his movie, in his superhero movie, he was doing all of these kind of menial tasks, and he was just being, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He wasn't going out and killing Thanos by himself or anything like that. He was just, I'm gonna help an old lady find where her destination is. I'm gonna stop a bike thief. I'm gonna go and help Mr. Stark because that's what I do. But yeah, everything that you guys said that I said I agree with, but I guess if I was to add anything more to that whole thing, it would just be the fact that Homecoming restored my faith and my love for Spider-Man, and I think just seeing how Tom Holland's Spider-Man in Peter Parker, you can see how the thing is that he has the right amount of energy for both roles. For a Spider-Man, he's he's always trying to be helpful, do the right thing. But when he's Peter Parker, he's I should probably think about the fact that I have these responsibilities, but I'm also just a regular school child. I still have all these other things that I want to do. I want to hang out with my friend. I want to make the Death Star. I want to go out with this girl that I really like. So I guess just seeing how he deals with the struggle, because all the other MCU characters, they're older, with the exception of Shuri, because I think she's around his age, but we haven't seen her a whole lot. But just kind of seeing him just interact with his world and taking on this responsibility of being a superhero, it, in a way, I felt inspired. So yeah, I really like this movie.
You got Far From Home coming early July, so
Yeah.
you'll be able to.
Then I can cry in the theater again.
All right, Tara,
Okay.
you're number 5.
All right. I am definitely alone with this.
Okay.
And I know that for a fact, everything. But this movie just holds a very special place and everything. But it's 101 Dalmatians.
Oh.
I don't know if I even have to go into why it's in this category.
The dude.
But I watched this, it was this film, it was Homeward Bound, it was the original animated, 101 Dalmatians, it was Oliver and Company, but it was just, just watching all these movies and everything, I was like, I want a Dalmatian, I want a dog, and it like inspired my whole like thing of I want to have a dog one day and everything. And then it's just, I remember when I first got Snowy as like a fourth grader and everything, I was like, I finally did it. I finally accomplished my dream of finally having like a dog and everything. And now I have Sora, and it's just, Cruella de Vil is amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. Glenn Close.
And then the puppies and everything. I mean, I understand completely that this is definitely a movie that is very much just my list only, and it's my personal opinion. But for my personal opinion, it is number 5.
Yeah, that's I understand.
Yep.
Yeah, I like it quite a lot. It's, I think I have it actually fairly. I think this is an odd thing to pair it with, but I think it's actually at about the same spot that Man on Fire is.
Oh!
Very different movie, of course, but you know they're very likable in their own ways.
Yeah. I have it pretty high, too.
I have so many Dalmatian plushies. For the longest time, I was like, I want a Dalmatian. I understand now, as most people should also understand, that just because you like a breed doesn't mean that it's necessarily a good fit for you and everything. And after reading tons, and I mean tons, of dog books, I have also come to the conclusion that a Dalmatian is probably not for me. But it still holds a very special place, and Dalmatians will also hold a very special place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good boys. Girls. Good boys and girls. All dogs are good boys and girls.
Oh, the puppies! So cute! Yeah. There's nothing really more to say about this.
It's fair. Okay, so you said your number 4 and number 5 were very, very close, right?
Yeah.
So my number 4, number 3, and number 2, I
Oh,
kept going
wow.
back and forth in terms of how to order these 3 movies.
Oh my god.
And I'm
dude.
like, I don't know. And so, I'll be honest, this might change tomorrow, okay, in terms of how I think about these 3 movies, but I'm just going to say it this way because that's the order that they're listed right now.
Okay.
And since nobody has mentioned this movie yet, I know it's going to be brought up again.
Okay.
Number 4 is Gravity.
Okay.
So, I'm not going to go into a lot of specific details because, again, I know that other people are going to bring them up. But, to me,
Very
it's...
specific person.
Yeah, to me, it's that this is very strange for a movie. In terms of how it is a movie, right? Again, the cinematography, the length that shots are held, how there isn't really any like time jumps in the story. It's basically like an hour and a half kind of story, almost. The music that works with this, the emotion that works with this, even if you don't necessarily get a lot of like specific information and a lot of like specific time with the characters, you end up still really liking them. It's just it's a really enjoyable movie, and it's one of those, out of all the movies we've seen on this challenge, this is the one I wish I saw in theaters.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Because
yeah.
it would have been just so damn impressive to see this in theaters. And because again, I saw Interstellar in theaters. I saw it in a special theater as well, and it's similar in terms of the effects, but I think it would work even better here in a sense, just because of how it's shot and how it holds on things and just all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I don't really want to go into any more specific details, but just everything about it is really damn good. And yeah, it's really damn good.
It's very close for me. It did not make the top 15, but I definitely agree with both of you. It's just that first scene, and when you realize that was all taken in a single shot, that's just amazing in its own right.
Okay, you're number 4.
So 3 out of the 4 of my top 4 might make me choked up. So yeah, these are the movies that made me cry, I guess, the most. So we're gonna start with Endgame.
Hmm.
Mm.
So I guess now you guys know why I paired this very closely with Homecoming.
Mm.
So speaking of special theater, Tara and I saw this in the Dolby IMAX theater.
Oh, I
It
didn't know
was
that.
yeah, it was quite a bit more expensive, but I think the experience was definitely worth it. And I cried like what, like 5 times?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna just, since I'm the first one to like talk about it, I'm gonna just say, is this movie perfect? No. But it has a lot of good payoff. And okay, some people are gonna say some of the payoff is not earned. That's a valid opinion. I do have a couple of things that I wish that were different, like, you know, with Black Widow after thinking about it and stuff, but I don't really know what to talk about because we like just like did this discussion not too long ago, so I feel like I don't really know what else I can talk about besides the fact that you guys know a trend that I couldn't handle Peter losing Tony Stark. And his daughter losing her father, and oh man, like, there were happy tears for, Steve Rogers with his happy ending. I will always be happy that he got his happy ending. And even though technically, like, Tony did everything that he wanted to do, I was thinking about his death the other day and I started crying. And I'm already crying now. I haven't really seen a movie in theaters that made me cry after, like, watching it. And it's only been like a week, like maybe a little bit less than a week since we saw it. And I still cry thinking about it. So, let's move on.
Right. So this is 4.
Yeah.
My number 4 is Apollo 13.
Hmm. I was wondering if anyone was going to mention this movie.
I think that's like right under Forrest Gump. It's like number 17 or something.
Yeah, mine's also like it's definitely, I'm pretty sure it's in the top 20. It's right around there.
So I think it's probably a similar reason for you too, Valen, where just for the longest time it was the one movie where it got me, even though I don't remember how I got interested in like astronomy or space or anything. I just remember going to the library and getting like planet books and reading about Pluto.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's not nearly as sad as most other things. But this was a movie that I remember watching it the first time, and I was really young. I think I was like 5 or 6
Oh,
or
wow.
something. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to like this movie because at the time I was very squeamish with also like really sad movies where I didn't watch it, which is kind of ironic considering something else coming up in this list for me. But it was a movie where I watched it again and again, and I still felt the tension. I still loved all the effects. I still loved like all the characters and everything. It holds a very special place in everything.
And again, it maybe doesn't hold like a super special place for me, but again, it's one of those movies that like does everything really well. So even if you don't have that specific connection to it, it's still a really good movie. So
I guess
yeah.
You guys are probably noticing a trend with me for these movies where I have a nostalgic attachment to a
yeah,
lot
that's
of
totally
these.
fair. So yeah.
Yep.
I guess yeah. The interesting thing for all of us is like we might have like different kinds of like themes, quote unquote, with our top 15. I guess that's like the special thing about this whole list. So
Okay, are we on to my number 3?
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Have it.
So, again, I said number 2, 3, and 4 for me were very, very close.
Mhm.
And so my number 3 is Endgame. Now, as I said, there are some things that are not like, that could have maybe been done a little bit differently. But I said this during the discussion that we had, is that I said, your enjoyment of a movie is not just a checklist of things you don't like.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. Enjoying movies is a very emotional and personal experience. And so even though it's kind of like how I said about Rogue One, right? I definitely recognize there's flaws, but it just clicks with me. And so here it's even more so because, first of all, the quote-unquote flaws that we have with this movie, the movie, are very minor, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
All things considered.
Right.
And everything.
And so, but the emotional payoff is huge. And it's not just with the ending stuff and like that stuff that you mentioned. That is absolutely a very big part of it. But so much stuff throughout, right? So
Yeah.
the thing I like to point to is again how with the whole time travel stuff in the middle of the movie, there's a lot that's like added on, there's a lot that's expanded on, there's differences. It's not just like, oh, we went back to the past and look, there's a reference to something that happened in a previous movie. It's not like that. It's more than that. And there's a lot of there's a lot of small moments. Or maybe not necessarily small, but they're not, for example, Ant-Man meeting his daughter again.
Yeah.
Right? That's a great moment. The moment in very early on with Nebula and Tony on the ship, right? That's a great moment. What is it?
The scene with like Nebula talking to Gamora and everything too.
And
just seeing the two Nebulas together, it's you can see how she changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the movie, it knows to focus on the original 6 Avengers. And even though we're probably going to see some of these guys again, mostly, Black Widow's going to get her own solo movie as a prequel, and we're almost certainly going to see Thor again. But this really feels like a climax and an ending for all 6 of them.
Yeah.
And, we were talking about how Infinity War balanced all these characters, but here it's almost even more so impressive, because even though it's 6 characters, you're still concluding all 6 characters. So, and that's extremely impressive, and even despite it being a very serious story and a lot of emotional moments, it's still, like, legitimately funny, and there's moments of that are really good, and I did tear up with this movie, and it's not just from sadness. The moment when basically everyone comes together and they do that charge into Thanos' army all together, that's, like, it's, again, like, kind of what you said about the Spider-Man Homecoming. It's inspirational in a way.
Yeah.
Right? It's just this swell of emotion. It's triumphant emotion, and it's it's just so damn powerful. And here's how powerful it was for me: is that remember I sent you a video a bit ago that was like it was like an audio recording of audience reactions to the movie.
Yeah.
And I was listening to that, and when they got to that movie, that scene, just from hearing the audio in crappy quality, I teared up from hearing that. Right? So that's how strong this was. And it's one of the things, like you said, like just thinking about it can make you emotional. And there's really only been one thing that I can really think of, like, ever, that, like, has gotten me emotional just by remembering it. Okay? And this was not it. Okay? It's actually was completely separate from the challenge, but this was pretty damn close. So, and again, the few tiny small flaws that are in there, those are basically my justification of putting it number 3. But the reason I would say to put it above Gravity, for example, is that this is a culmination of 22 movies.
Yeah.
And just inherently, that's insanely impressive.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, I think I absolutely love this movie. And I kind of want to see it again in theaters. Just to
I definitely want to see it.
I'm not sure if I want to see it in theaters. I think I actually want to see it like at home, so I can like see it closer and can see it better, just to maybe see some of the background details and not miss something. Because again, I much would prefer a smaller, closer screen than a bigger, further screen. But anyway, it's my own vision. But anyway, okay, your number 3.
Number 3. Let's see if I can get this through this one without crying. It's okay. One for 3. At number 3, I have Up.
And we're tied again.
Oh
Okay.
my god! What the hell?
I don't know.
Like I said, like the top 5 was very, very, very hard for me to order, and somehow we got a 3rd tie.
Jesus Christ.
I don't know. Is there anything to talk about with this movie? Like, I feel like everyone knows it. Oh my god.
You can probably guess why it's number 3.
This movie's just very touching. That's it. That's all I really want to say.
I think the line that got me was, Fallon, do you remember when you were talking about how, like, when you watch this movie and especially when you're older, you can kind of look at it with a new eye because you have like some relationships that you can like kind of parallel to like what happened and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, where when I watched it the first time, it's kind of like, well, did I watch it previously? I don't remember.
Yeah, I think we watched it with
Oh yeah.
other-
When we watched it the first time, I don't think it impacted me as much, but then after like going through a lot of stuff and then coming out of it with like really close people and everything, I'm just like, dang, if I ever lost any of those people, how would I go forward and stuff too? And just that scene with, well,
that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the first time we watched this, I was still kind of very closed off, so I didn't really want to emote to this movie. And like that one scene, like not the beginning, the middle one, I didn't understand it at first, because I guess the thing is that I don't have anything to remember that person by. Like, not really. Like, nothing I can, like, look. Damn, okay, 2 for 3. There's nothing I can, like, really hold in my hands and, like, look at. I have, like, a couple of pictures and, like, drawings from that person, but it wasn't until, like, after I revisited, like, the resting place and I started to, like, understand things a little bit better, and kind of recently I got an heirloom from them too that I wear on my wrist now. But yeah, that scene, I don't think I can watch it without like crying my eyes out for hours, because that's what happened at the end of that movie. So yeah, this is a great movie, and I don't understand why anyone would not want to see it. Unless you just don't want to cry, then that's understandable too, but
Yeah,
you're going to miss out.
Perfectly understandable.
So, yeah.
Okay, well, we didn't tie, but Up is my number 2. So,
So you might as well talk about it with us.
Add it in!
yeah, so, again, everything that you've said is true, for me, especially, again, I remember I watched this when I was younger, when it came out, and even a little bit after it came out, and I thought it was a really good movie, but, you know, really good in the sense that, like, you know, I wouldn't have said this was my favorite Pixar movie, right? I never would have said that. And I'm still not 100% sure, because I feel like I do need to rewatch a few other Pixar movies that I saw a bit ago. But definitely of the ones of this challenge and the ones I've seen recently, it is. And first of all, the story in general and the characters in general, they're very relatable. You completely understand pretty much why every character is doing everything, especially Carl.
Yeah.
Carl is honestly, he's jumped up to one of my favorite main characters.
Yeah.
Just because of how you just understand everything that he's going through and every decision he makes, even if it's not the right decision.
Yeah.
And then, again, the thing that really hit me, and the reason specifically why I put this at number 2 and why I did put this above like Endgame and Gravity, is it's the idea of, again, it's the relationship angle with somebody. And, you know, in a few months I will have been with Julie for almost 5 years. And you know, it sounds really cheesy, but like, you don't know what it's like to love someone until you do. And this idea of, like, here's someone who you would do anything for. You absolutely love them. And then they're not there anymore. What do you do? Right? And not just what do you do, but how do you kind of, like, live with yourself in a way? It's like, it's almost, it's again, even though if it's completely, like, not, like, your fault or whatever, you feel guilty. Right? And so even though, of course, like, she's not dead, right? I haven't had to deal with that, but, like, you know, there's been stuff where, like, something happens to her that's, you know, in her life that really sucks, and, like, I have absolutely nothing to do with it, and I can't do anything about it, right? But I feel really bad about it, and I feel, like, really sad for her, and I get emotional for her, because that's how this works, basically. You know, when you love someone, you just you live with them, in a sense. Even if you're not physically with them, you live with them mentally, you live with them emotionally, and I don't know, this just really hit something really deep for me, and I feel like I need to watch this again, almost, just to, like, kind of put this into words, because I feel like I'm kind of stumbling over myself, that I'm not really getting there, but, yeah, just, you know.
Yeah, I feel like this movie is just very emotional, and it's gonna mean something different for everyone. So I think it's very understandable that an individual can't put their specific feelings into words, because maybe some emotions you're not meant to put into words. And I always felt that, because, you know, it's hard to put feelings into words.
Mm-hmm. And
that's how it is.
Yeah,
sometimes.
and especially also again with the relationship angle for this, like, there's been so many times for me where I feel like I'm not doing enough, because it's just like, you have this, it's like, I love you so much, but, like, I'm not doing enough for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
When, like, there literally is, like, what could I do? I don't know, right? There isn't, like, some magical thing that I can do to, like, that would be better or anything. But it's the same kind of feeling where it's like, even with when I'm, you know, she's here and we do stuff together, I still feel like, you know, it's like, what am I doing, right? What am I supposed to do, not just for myself, but also for you? And again, it just manifested this movie so well. And again, even if you take that out of it, it's still a really good story with really good characters. And it's, you know, a lot of the movie is fun, even ignoring the emotional stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, this is all the way up for number 2 for me.
Okay. I'm gonna finally talk about something happy for a small break before we get to number 1. My number 2 is Mulan. So I've watched this many, many times. Many times. So I guess in a way this is like a retrospective thing and just a journey kind of thing where I didn't really realize for a long time that there's not really a lot of Asian representation. I'm just going to be very frank about that. Because again, I gravitated more towards Japanese media, and you can imagine a lot of those characters are Asian, and I don't have to worry about like not being represented. When I was a child, I was always like enamored with Mulan because I was like, oh yeah, she's cool. She has a sword. She does like these cool things. She's going to like battles, and she's the smart one. Like, I want to be like her. I didn't realize how like important that. Oh my god, I'm gonna cry now during the happy one. Okay. I didn't realize how important like the whole I want to be like that was like for me, because I think watching Mulan so many times and being inspired by her so many times, I kind of like found certain things that about myself that I wouldn't have explored. Like I think she's the reason why for a long time I liked action-oriented things and I liked shonen, because I liked swords, and I like to draw like people in action and like weapons. I like designing weapons for fantasy settings. I like armor, and I like battles, and I like thinking about those kinds of things, even the complexities of it, and after learning like what they actually are, like what war is, and like being able to teach children what war is very hard to do, because you have this story about this woman who wants to save her father. Again, I'm going to go back to the father thing, but it's also the story about someone who just also wants to do the right thing. Like Spider-Man, this is someone who wants to just kind of also find herself because she doesn't know who she is, and she has no way of like figuring it out because she lives in this very structured society, like the Lego movie. And I guess Mulan is in itself a very straightforward story. It's a very straightforward movie. You actually don't even see Shan Yu that much in this movie. But you spend so much time with Mulan, and I feel like over the years, all the times I've watched this movie, I've kind of grown up with her, and I cannot not enjoy her. She is like, she has conviction. She knows what she wants to do, and even though she like she makes mistakes, or she doubts herself, or she's doubted by other people, she overcomes it. And I think that's very important, like, to learn. And I have a big problem with giving up, so whenever I feel like I am giving up, I think of Mulan, and I'm like, great, yeah, I wanted to be like Mulan, so I should be. And yeah, it's it's more than just like me liking a badass Asian woman who saves China. It's me going back to being a child again, but then also like growing up with this character who I looked up to so much. So yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Speaking of battles and things like that, Endgame is number 2 for me. What can I add?
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it?
What can I add? I agree with all of your points. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I can add. Oh, here's something. So, Valen has cried during a lot of movies. That's not a secret.
I'm a weak bitch, okay?
Valen has admitted tearing up and crying during certain movies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a movie off the top of my head that I've ever cried for. And I don't think for this challenge. I was close to, but I don't think I ever actually cried and stuff. This movie, after like coming out of the theater and everything and seeing like the Iron Man scene, Captain America scene, the battle and everything and all the emotions and stuff, I remember I texted Mom, because this is actually a running gag in my family too, where I don't really usually express too much when watching movies and stuff, especially crying and stuff. Well, Mom would cry and my brother would cry and everything. Whereas, like, Mom, I think I finally watched a movie where I think I actually felt my eyes like well up and everything. So I also have been thinking about it a lot over the last couple of days. I wrote myself in my planner. I wrote like a whole thing out that same day and everything. It's just, yeah. That battle will stay in my mind. I want to watch it again. Probably still in theaters. But and probably again after that, I would want to watch it again and stuff. It's a hard. I feel like it's a movie that is hard to recommend someone just because you won't understand the impact of it unless you've seen like at least a decent chunk of the other movies, at least the other Avengers movies. So it's like hard to like recommend to someone because I was like, I feel like my mom would like this movie, but the fact that she didn't watch the other movies would probably make it lost on her as to the whole impact and everything. And it was also a movie that I was able to like bond over my brother with, and we're probably going to go watch the movie sometime and stuff. So yeah, that's what I have to add to this.
Okay. Well, with that, we're on our absolute favorite movies from all of this, and I think you can probably guess what they are for all of us, honestly, at this point.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Should we guess for you, and you guys guess for me, and
no,
we guess for Tara?
let's just go through it. So,
Okay.
my number one, and I said this at the time that it was my favorite movie we'd seen, and it's still true. I Am Legend. Now, remember I said that for Die Hard with a Vengeance, it was my favorite for like over 100 films?
Yeah.
So, Die Hard with a Vengeance actually was my favorite. It had the second longest streak for being my favorite movie.
Mm-hmm.
But now this has the longest streak, because it's been my favorite since, number 163, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, and, Maya, what you said is true in terms of here's this person who he just doesn't want to die.
Yeah.
And that's his motivation, right? Ultimately, of course, he says he wants to get a cure or whatever, but the whole part of the cure is to therefore not die, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where, like, I hear people kind of mention, like, oh, that's, like, not, like, a, that's not enough to, like, have a compelling arc with someone or something, and I don't think so. Because I know you've talked about death a lot, but for me, it really comes down to just, I don't want to die. And, you hear people talk about, oh, well, being immortal would actually be bad because blah, 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 and it's like, yeah, but you won't die, right? So, that's kind of my counter to any of this, and I'm not religious, I don't believe there's any sort of afterlife or reincarnation or anything, so to me, that's literally the end, and that is the worst possible thing, but, that's how I think that it just makes the most sense for that to be the case. So, for someone who is literally motivated by that and just any sort of shred of humanity, and that's manifested with his dog.
Mm-hmm.
And I have said, and I still stick with this, the first half of this movie is perfect. I think the first half of this movie is perfect. And it portrays the isolation and the loneliness and the desperation perfectly in terms of what it's trying to do. And you just get so sucked into this character and what he has to go through. And, like, for example, when he, goes to, like, the video store and there's, like, all the mannequins around. And then later when, like, there's one of the mannequins that's, like, on the road or whatever, and he, like, kind of loses it for a bit, right? Mm-hmm. And it's because, again, it's this, like, it's something, like, that's so whatever, right? But it breaks your mold, it breaks what you know about the world, and that's kind of your defenses. It's your mental defenses of, like, just trying not to lose your mind. And so when something kind of breaks through that, even if it's something random and stupid, and then his dog gets bit. And the scene where he has to kill his own dog is one of the most powerful scenes I've ever seen. And I don't know, like, it's, and then again, after that, once the other characters get introduced and that kind of stuff, it's still a very, very good movie. And again, like you've said, like there's the Shrek scene, which is of course silly and ridiculous, but like, you know, it helps kind of balance it out. And again, it points to like just kind of doing anything to keep yourself sane, right? And again, the thing is, the only thing I knew about this movie coming into it is, again, I knew it was something to do with zombies, and the thing is, I knew about the ending. In fact, I knew in detail what the two endings were. So you might think that, like, again, kind of like what we said about some of the twists, that like that would kind of ruin my enjoyment of the movie, right? Now, part of it, I think, is that even though I knew what both the endings were, the version that we saw, I didn't know what ending it would be, right? So that's still part of a surprise element to it. But yeah, it's still one of those things where even though, and so that was the interesting thing where for me, it was just kind of going through and trying to say, okay, which ending is it going to be, and trying to figure that out based on what was happening. But again, like what you said, I thought this is going to be, you know, kind of generic zombie movie. If you had asked me what was my favorite movie going to be from this, I wouldn't have even said this, like, ironically, because I just wouldn't have even thought of it, like, right? You know, as a joke, I would have been like, oh, 50 Shades of Grey, or whatever, right? But, like, this would have never crossed my mind, because to me, I never hear anyone talk about this. You know, the rating is, like, not, it's, like, okay, right? Granted, I think a lot of the rating that came from the theatrical cut, but still. So, like, it's just strange that, like, this was the one that I absolutely love. But it is. And is this my favorite movie, period? No. But might be second. It's very damn close if it's not. So if not. So yeah, I think so the list that I have, at least for my top 15, I'm thinking like there's a few movies I would add to that in terms of that I've seen outside of the challenge. But honestly, every single movie in my top 15 for this challenge, I think would probably be in like a top 20 list just of favorite movies. Right? And so I think I might change my mind on this later, but I think I'm going to say this is my second favorite movie ever. And just the fact that it was a fucking Will Smith zombie movie. You know, that's what I got.
Okay, so let's see if I can do this. Number 1 is Gravity. Do I know how to talk about this movie? I didn't really talk that much about it during the discussion because I was too busy crying. Because I don't know, how long was I crying?
Like
a long ass time.
Most of the discussion.
Yeah.
It was
like
mainly me and Valen, I think.
It was like the entire like third act, the like most like 90% of the discussion. So I don't even really know if I talked about this movie. Okay, so let's go back to the reference of I had a really freaking hard time doing top 5, and it was like 4 or 5 I had a hard time with, and it was 1, 2 that I had a very hard time with. As for why I ended up picking this over Mulan, like right now, I don't really know if I can say why, because like whenever I think about this movie, I lose all of my words. I can talk about like Mulan for forever because, you know, she's a character that I grew up with, and she means a lot to me, and like all the other movies that we talked about and that I like divulged my feelings about, I feel like those were very like not easy to put into words, but they were more manageable to put into words. This, I don't even like know if there are words to describe how I felt watching this movie. It was kind of surreal because in a way it kind of was like if I could take one emotion that I felt and characterize it physically, I would indeed set it in space. because space is one of those places where it's just a void. You don't have any control. You have even less control than you do like here on Earth. You step out of your comfort zone and you're gone. You just there's really like nothing you can do, and just I felt so vulnerable watching this movie, and I think just that setting and those circumstances and just the character interactions, they were just the stage of how I feel about certain things that have been referenced in this very long 2-hour discussion. But I think that's the only way I can really describe how I feel about Gravity. It's surreal. I don't know if there's any way I could ever put it into words, but I think the best way that I could is to just put it number one and not think too hard about it, because that won't end very well. So there you go.
I feel like I should have gone first for this because my number one is probably very obvious, and I don't think I have nearly enough words to describe why it's number one as both of you do for yours. But I guess we're going to end with my number one, which people probably saw a mile away. You guys both guessed what it was. And it's the very first movie we ever even saw for this challenge. And I guess in that way I'm lucky that I was able to watch my favorite movie as the very first movie for this challenge, which is Lion King. So, actually, for a while, I had Lion King as number 3, actually.
Oh.
For a very long time. And the thing that tipped it was that on... what day was it? It was Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday.
It was Saturday. Mom was like, Tara, they were showing like Lion King on TV, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll go watch it. So I watched it. It was my first time watching it with commercials, which was annoying. But, just like it was also, I think, the first time I watched it with Mom in like maybe 10 years or something. It's been a very long time. We did go see it when it did re-release in theaters. I don't remember when that was, but we didn't watch it for the challenge because obviously why would we re-watch Lion King? But just I remember I talked about in the discussion, probably the only thing I'm very proud of that discussion for, because Valen has mentioned that most of our early discussions are not that great, the grand scheme of things. But, was that watching it again, I realized that I actually went through Simba's arc and everything, like when I was much older and stuff, and just rewatching it again with my mom and everything just brought back all those emotions to the point where after I finished watching it, I had to go back to my list and I had to move it up after that, which is ironic because Up is my third place movie, so. I don't have anything profound to say about it, but it is my number one movie, so there you go.
There you go, indeed. It is kind of funny because again we were like earlier today, we were kind of like predicting each other's choices, right? And I would just like to say that I guessed Mai's top 3 exactly. And I remember I was like, I don't know what to say for Tara, but I know Lion King is there. So, as far as I'm concerned, I'm 100% correct. So, and then
I think mine. That was the same for you too, right?
Yeah. I guessed Lion King because I know that's a very important movie to you, and then Endgame because of what we were talking about after we saw it in theaters.
Well,
I didn't know what 3 would be.
yeah.
I didn't know what 3 would be.
Yeah, well, you didn't know my number 3 either. You said I Am Legend and Up, so
Yeah.
And Tara, you guessed, what did you get? You guessed for me I Am Legend. Did you guess Up or Endgame? I don't remember now.
I think I guessed Up.
Yeah, and then you said Toy Story 2 actually.
Yeah.
Which that was.
I was thinking of it in the same vein as how I was ranking it, where I was with the whole nostalgia factor going into it, so I thought the nostalgia factor would factor in, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I went like, what hurt Valen the most emotionally?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I guess prioritized the most. What movie crushed me? Yeah. I just said
Mai the most, and then there's me where
you just want to be happy.
yeah.
Yeah.
We want to be destroyed. Yeah, to be fair, Toy Story 2, it's, again, I think it's in the top 20. It's very high up there. But, yeah, so, it is interesting, because, like, I don't know, I really came into this thinking that, like, these are all going to be, like, very different between each other, but there is actually more similarities than I thought there would be.
There is. I also did not expect to tie with Mai three times.
3 times, dude!
That's crazy, yeah.
I guess, like, the thing is that, during, like, some of these specific discussions, we did have very similar feelings and or commentary, so I felt like maybe a couple would overlap, but this was definitely a lot more than I thought there would be.
I didn't think that this was going to happen.
Yeah, there's several where, like, 2 of us have said something, and I'm just checking right now. Okay, there are 5 movies where we all 3 of them have talked about them, and that was Benjamin Button, Up, Spider-Man: Homecoming, Infinity War, and Endgame. So, basically, a third of all of our lists are shared. Just, order's different.
Yeah.
But, and then again, several movies that 2 of us have mentioned. Actually, there's been very few movies, actually, that only, like, 1 of us mentioned. Like, let's see. 1.
I think I'm the one with most of it just because of what I did with it.
Yeah, so I have 5 unique movies. Tara and I both have 5 unique movies, and then Miley has 3 unique movies. So it is interesting that kind of how that lined up. Yeah, I don't know. I really thought that we'd be more different, but I guess
I guess like the standalone ones for all of us are like kind of very like characteristic towards us, because like I had like Sixth Sense, Man on Fire, and Captain America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Tara. Let's see. You had Lion King, Apollo 13, 101 Dalmatians,
Finding
Nemo, and what was the last one? Oh, the first Avengers movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right. So, and then I had War for the Planet of the Apes,
Madagascar 3,
Rogue One, Madagascar 3, Inception, and The Incredibles.
Mm-hmm.
Lord of the Rings too, right?
Oh yeah, Lord of the Rings. Wait.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings.
Okay. So, yeah, but I don't know. So it was interesting just to kind of go through this and see what we think about stuff that we like the most. And definitely, again, even though we had very similar things, we all kind of had slightly different things to focus on for a lot of these movies.
Yeah.
So hopefully this wasn't too repetitive. Hopefully you were at least engaged enough for almost 2.5 hour long discussion.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
I'm also tired.
Yeah. I have a headache.
I'm sorry, I'm coughing again. We've come full circle.
Oh, hooray. Come full circle. See, and we ended with The Lion King, right?
Savannah.
Well, okay, but we've not ended with The Lion King, because now we have to talk about
all the movies we hate.
Yes. Speaking of me having a headache, I'm gonna have to recall all this.
Have it carry over until the next video.
Oh boy. Speaking, I have a feeling that we're gonna have a lot of things in common with
We're
each
definitely
other.
gonna have a lot of similarities with
Yeah.
the bottom 15.
I mean, considering we had what 3 ties in this one, how many ties are we gonna have for the next one? Jeez.
Oh god.
Buckle up, guys.
Yeah, it's gonna be full of anger, all different types of anger.
Rage, crying
Yeah.
for different reasons.
Yeah, I am the rage. Mai is like just despair, and Tara is just like seething. the silent assassin that you know it's the time bomb that you don't know that it's going to explode, but you're like careful about it anyway, because you're like, if it does explode, you're like completely dead. So yeah, but anyway, that'll be next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Oh my god.